Chapter 25. Of the defects of gifts, disquieting the soul, as also the afflictions of the church. Among other things, there is nothing more disquiets a Christian, that is called to the fellowship of Christ and his church here, and to glory hereafter, than that he sees himself unfurnished with those gifts that are fit for the calling of a saint, as likewise for that particular standing and place wherein God hath set him in this world, by being a member of a body politic. For our Christian calling, we must know that Christianity is a matter rather of grace than of gifts, of obedience than of parts. Gifts may come from a more common work of the Spirit, they are common to castaways, and are more for others than for ourselves. Grace comes from a peculiar favor of God, and especially for our own good. In the same duty, where there is required gifts and grace, as in prayer, one may perform it with evidence of greater grace than another of greater parts. Moses, a man not of the best speech, was chosen before Aaron to speak to God, Exodus 7:11, and to strive with him by prayer, whilst Israel fought with Amalek with the sword, Exodus 17:11. It is a business more of the heart than of the tongue, more of groans than of words, which groans and sighs the Spirit will always stir up even in the worst condition. Yet for parts there is no member, but it is fitted with some abilities to do service in the body, and by faith may grow up to a greater measure. For God calls none to that high condition, but whom in some measure he fits to be an useful member, and endows with a public spirit. But that is the measure which Christ thinks fit, who will make up that in the body which is wanting in any particular member. God will increase the measure of our gifts as occasion shall be offered to draw them forth, for there is not the greatest but may have used both of the parts and graces of the meanest in the church. And here the soul may by a spirit of faith go to God in this manner: Lord, the state of Christianity unto which thy love in Christ hath called and advanced me, is a high condition, and there is need of a great measure of grace to uphold the credit and comfort of it. Whom you call unto it, thou dost in some measure furnish to walk worthy of it. Let this be an evidence to my soul of the truth of thy call, that I am enabled by the Spirit for those duties that are required, in confidence of which assistance I will set upon the work. Thou hast promised to give wisdom to them that ask it, and to upbraid none with their unworthiness. Nay, thou hast promised the Spirit of all grace to those that beg it, James 1:5. It is that which I need, and it is no more than thou hast promised. Caution. Only it must be remembered, that we do not walk above our parts and graces, the issue whereof will be discouragement in ourselves and disgrace from others. The like may be said for our particular calling, wherein we are to express the graces of our Christian calling, and serve one another in love, Galatians 5:13, as members of the state as well as of the church. Therefore every one must have, 1. A calling, 2. A lawful, 3. A useful calling, 4. A calling fitted for his parts, that he may be even for his business, 5. A lawful entrance and calling thereunto, 6. And a lawful demeanor in the same. Though the orb and sphere we walk in be little, yet we must keep within the bounds of it, because for our carriage in that, we must give a strict account, and there is no calling so mean but a man shall find enough to give a good account for. Our care must be to know our work, and then to do it, and so to do it as if it were unto God, with conscience of moderate diligence, for overdoing and overworking anything comes either from ostentation or distrust in God, and negligence is so far from getting any blessing, that it brings us under a curse for doing God's work negligently, Jeremiah 48:10. For we must think our callings to be services of God, who hath appointed us our standing therein. That which belongs to us in our calling is care of discharging our duty, that which God takes upon him is assistance, and good success in it. Let us do our work, and leave God to do his own. Diligence and trust in him is only ours, the rest of the burden is his. In a family, the father's and the master's care is the greatest, the child's care is only to obey, and the servant's to do his work. Care of provision and protection doth not trouble them. Most of our disquietness in our calling is that we trouble ourselves about God's work. Trust God and be doing, and let Him alone with the rest. He stands upon His credit so much, that it shall appear we have not trusted Him in vain, even when we see no appearance of doing any good. Peter fished all night and catch nothing, yet upon Christ's word he casts in his net again, and caught so many fish as brake his net. Luke 5:6. Covetousness, when men will be richer than God would have them, troubles all. It troubles the house, the whole family, and the house within us, our precious soul, which should be a quiet house for God's Spirit to dwell in, whose seat is a quiet spirit. If men would follow Christ's method, and seek first the kingdom of heaven, Matt. 6:33, all other things would be cast upon them. If thoughts of insufficiency in our places discourage us, remember what God saith to Moses, when he pretended disability to speak, who hath made man's mouth, have not I the Lord? Exodus 4:11. All our sufficiency for every calling is from God. Objection. But you will say, though by God's blessing my particular condition be comfortable, yet the state of God's people abroad, and the miseries of the times, disquiet me. Answer. We complain of the times, but let us take heed we be not a part of the misery of the times, that they be not the worse for us. Indeed he is a dead member that takes not to heart the ill of the times, yet here is place for that complaint. Help, Lord, Psalm 12:1. In these tempests do as the disciples did, cry to Christ to rebuke the tempests and storms. Matthew 8:25. This is the day of Jacob's trouble, let it also be the day of Jacob's trust. Let the body do as the head did in the like case, and in time it shall be with the body as it is with the head. In this case it is good to lay before God all the promises made to His church, with the examples of His presence in it, and deliverance of the same in former times. God is never nearer His church than when trouble is near. When in earth they conclude an utter overthrow, God is in heaven concluding a glorious deliverance. Usually after the lowest ebb, follows the highest springtide. Christ stands upon Mount Zion. There is a council in heaven, that will dash the mold of all contrary councils on earth, and which is more, God will work the raising of the church, by that very means by which His enemies seek to ruin it. Let us stand still and behold the salvation of the Lord. Exodus 14:13. God gave too dear a price for His church, to suffer it long in the hands of merciless enemies. As for the seeming flourishing of the enemies of God's church, it is but for a time, and that a short time, and a measured time. The wicked plot against the just, Psalm 37:12, they are plotters and plowers of mischief, Job 4:8, they are skillful and industrious in it, but they reap their own ruin. Their day is a coming, Psalm 37:12, and their pit is in digging, Psalm 94:13. Take heed therefore of fretting, Psalm 37:7, because of the man that bringeth wicked devices to pass, for the arms of the wicked shall be broken, Psalm 37:17. We should help our faith by observing God's executing of judgment in this kind. It cannot but vex the enemies of the church, to see at length a disappointing of their projects, but then to see the mold of all their devices turned upon their own heads, will more torment them. In this case, it will much comfort to go into the sanctuary, for there we shall be able to say, Yet God is good to Israel, Psalm 73:17. God hath an ark for His. There is no condition so ill, but there is balm in Gilead, comfort in Israel. The depths of misery are never beyond the depths of mercy. God oft for this very end, strips His church of all helps below, that it may only rely upon Him, and that it may appear that the church is ruled by a higher power than it is opposed by. And then is the time when we may expect great deliverances of the church, when there is a great faith in the great God. From all that have been said, we see that the only way to quiet the soul is to lay a charge upon it to trust God, and that unquietness and impatiency are symptoms and discoveries of an unbelieving heart.